The Nashville Predators team looks irretrievably broken. We're going to recap another shutout loss and discuss the only bright spot in another disastrous performance by a team that has no business being this bad on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this? Oh my gosh. Thank goodness it is Friday episode with a shout out to, of course, our Locked On Predators insiders and to our everydayers. We appreciate your support. We love talking Nashville Predators hockey with you most days. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer with Penalty Box Radio. My friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
Emma, this is going to be one of those days where it's just a little bit harder to talk about the Nashville Predators because, again, we have to recap another loss. The Predators fall to 7-14-6 after losing last night to the Montreal Canadiens. And friends, it's a hot mess. We are, of course, going to share our one word to describe the game. We are going to break down the performance of new addition Justus Annunen. And we are going to talk about what is next for a team that is far past underperforming. Before we dive into that, we do want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I just, at some point, Emma, you run out of words, and which is unfortunate because wording is our job. We worders.
Word for a living, and the wording do be tough right now.
The wording is not wording well, but we're going to try to piece together some thoughts. I want to full confess at the beginning of this episode, I am a little up in my feels. And you know, if you're an everydayer, if you're an insider, you know the Kimmel family mantra, feelings are like farts. They're indicators of something. They don't necessarily mean what you think they do. I don't know, Emma. I'm wondering if my feelings may be dead on. So as somebody who is normally a hocktimist, I have to tell you that blood pressure feels a little high, disappointment and frustration through the roof. So we'll see. We're just going to see what happens today, y'all. Come along on the journey with us. It's Friday. Of course, we always start our recaps with one word to describe the game. Of course, the Predators fell last night 3-0 against the Montreal Canadiens, a team that is like third worst in the entire league, and Nashville was shut out. So again, no offense to be found. Emma, do you want to kick it off with your one word to describe whatever the hell that was?
Yes, and I'm quite proud of myself because I am sticking to actually one word this time.
Nice.
Because again, the words are hard to come by, but my one word is waste, because there were so many opportunities and just straight up gifts that were wasted. I mean, early in the game, there's a too many men penalty, and guess what? It's not on Nashville, and yet it still comes back to bite them because Montreal scores a shorthanded goal on them. So it's like you get an early power play opportunity, you waste it. You get a tremendous performance from your backup goalie in his Predators debut, and you waste it. Even like, you know, going back to the last game against Toronto, it's like that goal from Jonathan Marchessault, very fluky. That was a gift. Mm-hmm. They wasted it. And it's just, it looks like so much waste is happening right now. Plus, it just, the on ice product just looks like a big pile of waste. So waste is my word.
It is
Yes.
waste. I am not. You're winning the one word because first of all, nailed it. Second of all, one word, bonus points. I am not going to get any bonus points because I'm using 3 words. And these 3 words come from the great film classic, Kung Fu Panda. Have you seen Kung Fu Panda?
I have. It's been a while, but I have.
It is just truly one of the greatest movies ever. If you all have not seen Kung Fu Panda, watch it this weekend. Even if you're a grown up, watch it anyway. It's great. But in Kung Fu Panda, Po the panda thought that he was the dragon warrior. And then he kind of failed and he comes home and his dad, who runs a noodle shop, who has this famous noodle recipe, decides that he is going to tell Po the secret ingredient to his world famous secret ingredient soup. And so my one word is secret ingredient soup. Because the secret ingredient in the secret ingredient soup is nothing. Nothing. And that's how I feel about this Nashville Predators team. The secret ingredient to this amazing roster is nothing. It's nothing.
Did you just give away the movie for people who haven't seen it?
There's plenty more for you all to be hanging off the cliff about. So yeah. But I will say it is a sweet moment, as the Po's dad explains, to make something special, you just have to believe it's special. This team does not believe. This team does not have it. There is nothing right now from this Nashville Predators team. You look at that performance against Montreal, and I don't doubt that these players want to win. I don't doubt that at all. But that is not translating into anything that is very productive on the ice. As a matter of fact, I think we're seeing counterproductive response to where this team is at. And it just doesn't seem special. It just nothing. There is nothing in the secret ingredient soup right now for the Nashville Predators. They're just a team playing hockey, and they don't seem to believe in it. We always chat with our Locked On Predators insiders. Let me tell you something. That's a support group right there. You all are, of course, welcome to join. Information is in the information on this video. You can also find the information on our bio if you want to join one of the greatest support groups in the world. We chat through the game. We chat after the game and want to share a couple of their one words. Dustin says, my one word tonight is Christmas vacation, because instead of the Preds giving us a Christmas bonus, they've enrolled us in the Jelly of the Month Club.
That's a great one.
Nailed it, Dustin. So true. This is we were planning on a pool and we're getting Jelly of the Month Club.
Yep.
Macy's one word is therapy. The players need therapy. The fans need therapy. Everyone needs therapy at this point. Send the bill to 501 Broadway. Oh, yeah. Macy is not wrong. Like, I will tell you, you know what? I keep perspective just in general in life. I'm pretty good at keeping perspective. And, I love this team, but I don't live or die by what happens on an ice rink somewhere because, my life is bigger than that. And that's just not how I roll. But this is the product is hard to watch. The failure is hard to watch. The consistent disappointment is really hard to watch. The wording after watching one of these games is really difficult for Emma and I. Like, it is really tough to find the things to say, because what do you say about this team that consistently isn't doing it?
I mean, that's just it. It's like, we don't have the answers. And that's the thing. Even casually, like in a non-professional setting, people who know, that I cover the Predators for a living will be like, hey, what's going on with the Preds right now? And I'm like, I don't know. Okay. I don't know. And I wish I did. But like it's just, we're all just dumbfounded. And again, I maintain that no one is more confused, upset, just generally downtrodden by this than the players themselves.
Agreed.
So as bad as it feels, and I understand it feels bad for the fans, like totally justified, That times a million is how it feels for the players. And I wish I knew. I wish I knew the way out of it. From what I can tell on social media, quite a few fans think they have all the answers, and that's great for them. But I don't think any of us does. And that's what's just so baffling about this team right now.
This team needs a diagnosis from Dr. House. Like this, we are at Mayo Clinic level. Okay. We're not just going to pop into urgent care and get an x-ray. This team, what is going on with this team is so much more complicated than what people want to say it is. You want it to be one thing. That because one thing is easy to fix. What is going on with this team is a combination of 4 or 5 different problems. And when you fix maybe one of those problems, you're going to see progress in some of those other areas. The team right now can't gain traction against any of the obstacles in front of them. And that's really frustrating and hard to watch. And yes, for anybody who is wondering this, these players are beside themselves. So don't think, no matter what you may see on the ice, don't think that they're like, I'm still getting paid $5 million, $8 million, whatever the $1 million thing is. They care. And I have to remind myself, for as frustrated as I am, they are equally as frustrated and wanting to find a solution. Coming up, we are going to talk about the one very bright spot in a game that was devoid of bright spots, quite honestly. Let's talk about Justus Annunen's debut for the Nashville Predators in just a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it is all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit fanduel.com to join today. Again, you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's fanduel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Emma, for my blood pressure, we're going to pivot and we're going to talk about like the singular positive thing that we saw in this Montreal game. And I think it's positive, Emma, not just for that 60 minutes of disaster, but I think that this is something that fans need to take as a sign of a long-term positive. And that is the performance of Justus Annunen. This guy came into a tough situation. He has only been with the team, less than a week. He's had some practices with the players, of course, and he's been working with Ben Vanderklok and he's been working with UC Saros and in practices with the team. But he's so fresh. He doesn't even know where Trader Joe's is yet, let alone where the ketchup aisle is. That's how fresh Justus Annunen is. And Big Juice got his first start for the Predators last night against Montreal. And Emma, I got to tell you, he knocked my socks off.
I have to, again, we know there are a few things in this world that I love more than being right. And I am very pleased to be right. Again, it was one performance. I'm not, and they still lost, but it was very like Big Juice doing his Little Juice impression.
Yes.
Keeping his team in the freaking game, giving them a chance when they were doing absolutely nothing in front of him. I mean, that game could have easily been, it ended up 3-0 because of an empty netter at the end. I mean, it could have at least been 5-0 before the empty netter.
Easily.
And I think that, it was just, I was really impressed with him. He looked really poised under pressure, and he faced a lot of pressure. That's a very young, very fast Canadiens team. And while, like you said, they, definitely aren't near the top of the standings, they've got a lot of youth, they've got a lot of talent, and a lot of speed. And so they come at you fast. And he was really impressive. And I mean, I think that's what you see is like, you can see where he's been in those situations for Colorado before. I mean, quite honestly, a lot of the time he was coming in relief of Alexander Georgiev because, the game has already gotten away from them at that point. Georgiev gives up, 4 goals or whatever, is pulled in the first 10 minutes. And then Annunen has to come in and really try to just kind of hold steady. And that, I think you're seeing that. You see that experience, that poise that he had. And again, back when this trade was made, again, I love Scott Wedgwood. I genuinely
love him.
I genuinely miss him. Like again, these are rough times. Like we said, the players are not having fun. Scott Wedgwood, genuinely, a lot of times the only guy I actually enjoyed talking to.
He is delightful. He is the definition of a delightful person.
It's awesome. But, I think that, and understandably, people saw that as a direct 1-for-1. It wasn't a trade, but essentially a 1-for-1 trade. Okay, we lose this top 10 goaltending prospect and we get a 32-year-old backup journeyman who's only going to be here for 2 years. Like, how does that help us? Well, now you have your answer. We took the scenic route to get there, but we got there. That now we have a 24-year-old who's really promising, really talented, and he can be part of something for a long time here, and this, like you said, this is not just positive for right now. This is positive for the long term. And again, clearly, if this team is having an offense problem, then they're going to need, games where their goaltending is going to have to, drag them into the fight. And Lord knows UC Saros knows how to do that. And so now it looks like Big Juice is going to be able to do that as well. I also heard Mark Del Gaizo said that they were experimenting with other nicknames to avoid confusion. Because I even still catch myself. I'm like, Big Juice. Wait, no,
makes sense.
Because like I think of little as in younger, but Little Juice is actually just like the smaller one.
Right.
So anyway, they were experimenting with nicknames, and they came up with Nooner, which I kind of liked.
Okay, but do you know the colloquial? Do you know what that? Because my husband, they mentioned it on the broadcast, and my husband and I were like, "Ooh, I don't know, man."
Yes, but
empty nesters, that's not a term that we throw around casually.
in today's like young people culture, a lot of times it's used sort of like a slang term for high noon for the drinks, the vodka drinks. And so I think that's like it's more kind of like hip now, and I just said hip, which makes me sound really old. And so
I agree with you. This is somebody who should relieve a little bit of the steam with the Askarov angst. Because when I look at Annunen, I see somebody that can very easily become the heir apparent for UC Saros, and I know UC Saros signed for 8 years and all this stuff. Well, at some point, UC Saros is going to stop playing Connor Hellebuyck number of games at some point, and you want to be able to have somebody ready to step into that and transition, sort of the way Pekka and Hughes did. And so I was so thrilled to see him. Here's the other thing: there is a lot of Justus Annunen. That's a lot of Finn. You all 6'4", over 200 pounds. And I will tell you, I thought his movement in net was fantastic. I was so impressed with that. And it was good to see it at game speed. Like I said, we've seen him in a couple of practices before they went on this trip, but to see him in game speed, his reaction, his puck tracking, I thought, man, this is something that makes me feel a lot better, not just now for this season, but I really feel like this is a really great long-term piece for the Predators. What are we going to learn about this team between now and Christmas, Emma, that you think is going to change anything? And at this point, I'm even putting postseason hopes aside.
Well, they could win. That's
Even
a
blind
start.
squirrel finds a nut sometimes, Emma.
They could, win a game. Haven't done that in a while, but that I think though that
I vaguely remember that being part of the objective years ago.
God, it's been 84 years. Yeah, I think there's still more to learn, and I keep harping on this, but at Christmas last year, this was not a playoff team. At January last year, this was not a playoff team. And again, I'm not saying that this is going to turn into a playoff team because they've gotten off to a even worse start than they did last year. So again, like you said, putting postseason hopes aside, I think so much of this, and I know people are not going to want to hear this because it sounds like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and every failure is a lesson. And what other platitude can I just dole out here? But it's kind of like what makes a team is, like the true test of a team, I think, is how it handles these situations. And now, granted, you don't want to have to go through these situations at all, but here we are, and you need to see, like, can they get out of it? Do they have the pieces to get out of it? Do they have, like, what is the issue? What is, is this something that can be resolved with the current personnel? Is it something that is going to require a personnel change? And I mean, by personnel, I mean players or coaches. That can include everything. So I just, there's just, I think, so much that you learn about people's character and their ability to get through hardship like this. And so that's what I think these next handful of games before Christmas can tell us. That's kind of what you can learn from a stretch like this, is like, okay, you're in the, you're in the excrement and now you have to shovel it. And how can you pick up the shovel and do it, or are you just going to sit in it? And I think that's what the next handful of games can tell us.
Yeah. Coming up, we'll look at those games leading up to Christmas time and look ahead to Ottawa on Saturday. So, Emma, we talked about these games leading up to Christmas. That is a timeline Barry Trotz kind of threw out there as like, I'm going to let this ride and see what happens till Christmas. Well, tomorrow night, they're going to be facing off against the Ottawa Senators. Now, here's what I will say about this. I would feel very differently if the Predators had won last night against Montreal, because I feel like then you would get some momentum. This team is desperate for a win. This team is desperate for a win. At this point, any win does not have to be a pretty win, does not have to be a statement win, does not have to be a regulation time win. They just need a win. And it was like, okay, if they can get that against Montreal, a team that in theory, beatable, a solid team. You mentioned they've got young talent, but this is a team that they could have beat. Then going into Ottawa, then you have the opportunity to win a couple back-to-back. And then they head to Calgary, or no, they actually come home and play Calgary next Tuesday. And you think, okay, if they're starting to feel themselves, maybe they could get some momentum and get those 3 wins. To not get this win in Montreal feels a little tough, because after Ottawa and Calgary, you are looking at Dallas, Colorado, the Rangers, Pittsburgh, the LA Kings, and the Carolina Hurricanes. So if you want to ramp up to face teams like Dallas, like Colorado, like Carolina, like the Kings, you have got to get some confidence and some wins under your belt. So to me, Ottawa is high noon. It's nooner, as the hip folks say. And I felt like Montreal was high noon, but okay, didn't get that one. You got to win. They've got to win Saturday night. They have to win, because I just don't know how much longer Barry Trotz can let this go on. I don't know. So for me, Saturday, it's high noon.
Yeah, it feels weird really to call any game in December a must-win game,
It does.
but that's where we are. Like you said, it's every game, Wednesday against Toronto was a must-win game. Thursday against Montreal was a must-win game. Saturday against Ottawa was a must-win game. I mean, like they have painted themselves into this corner. And so that's where they are right now. I mean, Ottawa only slightly better than Montreal in the standings. They just beat the Red Wings, and that's the only team between them and the Canadiens in the standings. So again, not exactly a clash of the Titans there, but I think that, again, this is another, like you said, not a bad team, but this is a winnable game. It should be. And you need to start stringing some of these together because this is, Ottawa's a team that it's interesting that they were like not really, they're kind of in where the Predators were before. Well, I mean,
back in the good old days.
Yeah, back when they actually won games. No, but like, just not quite knowing what they are. Like they were trying to be, trying to rebuild and trying to be competitive by now. And they just, invested in a goaltender and all of and then it still just seems like they're not quite there yet. And honestly, Montreal, different but similar, with like they had this influx of youth, and now that they're supposed to be in this competitive window and they're still not really there yet. And so again, these are teams who, like, in theory, the Predators are leaps and bounds ahead of them in terms of their like organizational timeline. But again, that means nothing. So
yeah, I really struggle right now with this Christmas timeline if something does not happen Saturday night in Ottawa. Because again, I look at the teams that you have coming up, Dallas, Colorado, and I get it. Sometimes the Predators play to the level of their opponent. At
Winnipeg.
Yes. But at this point, you can't bank on anything with this team. You really can't say, hey, you know what? They're going to travel to Dallas and they are going to play up to Dallas's level. They could, but there's just absolutely no way to predict what this team is going to do. And at this point, I think this team is so flummoxed. I think this team is in such a bad mental state, or at least wrestling to stay out of such a tough mental state because of what is going on, that I really worry that, and again, postseason aside, Barry Trotz says if Christmas time comes and we're not winning, we're going to bring up the youth. What are you going to bring these youth up into? You got to get some of this crap straightened out. And I'm not necessarily talking about getting points and moving up in the standings. I'm talking about you need to be able to bring these young players into a locker room where the veteran players have their feet underneath them. And here's what I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear Josi's a bad leader. I don't want to hear there is infighting in the locker room. If you talk to people who are in the locker room, if you talk to people who are around the team, if you talk to people who watch this team from, a semi-close distance, you are not going to hear those things. That's low-hanging fruit to grab onto to explain what is going on with this team, but that's not what the problem is. There are so many little things going wrong for this team. And you talked about it, Emma. You talked about they're in a hole and they need to climb their way out. And it's going to be like one foothold and handhold at a time. They aren't winning enough games to get their hand in there or get their foot in there and pull themselves up. And so I think, standings aside, at this point, you have to get some momentum. You have to get some health. You have to get some perspective that will last in the locker room before you bring youth up. And I worry about that. I worry about what this team is going to look like at Christmas time if something doesn't change. We have had conversations about the coaching changes. We have laid out reasons why Barry Trotz has said that he is not likely to fire Andrew Brunette. Will he go back on that if things continue? I would be surprised, but at this point, something has to happen. So I'm closer to being less surprised now than I was last week, maybe.
And again, this is not an opinion even. This is literally what Barry Trotz
What he
said.
We're just telling you what he said.
We're literally stating facts here. This is what Barry Trotz said. And it is our job as journalists, as reporters, to report the facts. Those are the facts. That's what he said. Now, of course, yes, we come in with our opinion and our, our personal flair. It's so easy to pick the low-hanging fruit. And I don't just mean that coaching is, that's just low-hanging fruit. It's not a problem. It might be. I don't know.
It could be a part of a very complicated problem.
Yes. But that is just it, is that this is a complex, multi-layer, multi-level problem that doing one thing, making one move is not going to fix it, clearly. Yeah. And so that's why, just to play, devil's advocate here, let's just say Andrew Brunette gets fired tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Then what? Then what happens? What if they keep losing? Then what? Who do you want to fire now? Barry Trotz. That's not happening.
That's not happening.
Oh, it's just like, I get the frustration. I do. Believe me,
we feel it, y'all.
We have to watch them too. Okay. We don't get to turn the game off when it's going poorly. Again, there's so many things, and I know the frustration can make you want to point at one thing. I mean, that's just human nature. We want to be able to point at one thing, be like, that's the problem, fix it. And it's like, okay, in reality, maybe it's part of the problem, but that alone is not going to fix it. So I just think that, again, they are too deep in this hole. They're in the excrement. They have the shovel, but can they actually start digging? Because we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. Well, they're going to take the shovel and wade through the excrement again Saturday night. They are, of course, finishing up that Canadian road trip in Ottawa. Game is at 6 p.m. Central Time Saturday night. Of course, Emma and I are going to be watching because that's what we do on Saturday nights, y'all. And we will have the recap on Monday. We're going to talk about what happened in this Ottawa game, where the Nashville Predators can go from wherever they are, a win or a loss. We're going to talk about that on Monday's episode. So make sure you tune back in.
And let me tell you what, I am very excited. On Saturday, I am getting a facial. I'm having a whole self-care day. So if this team comes and ruins my self-care day, there will be hell to pay when they are back in town on Monday. We will have some words.
We want our zen.
You owe me a facial now.
That's right.
And a massage. Throw that into.
That's right.
That.
I need a whole new bottle of Tums, my friends.
Yes.
Whole new bottle.
Yeah.
I thought I was done taking those when a scar off moved, but here we are, still having gastrointestinal distress over hockey. But you know what? We're here for it. We love it. We love that you all tune in and are along on this absolute bat poop crazy ride of this season with us. We appreciate that. We look forward to seeing you all again on Monday. Emma, before we go, where can everybody find you and your work?
You can find my work online at the Hockey News. You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, unless you want to yell at me about how frustrated you are about the Predators, in which case you can't find me anywhere.
No. You can find me on social media with kind words and affirmations at ANK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. Friends, that's going to do it for this week's episodes of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for taking this Monday through Friday journey with us. I know the results haven't been fun, but you know what? We learned about Krampus this week, y'all. We are cultured and we're ready for whatever happens this weekend. So we will see you here on Monday.